It's the Worth Knowing live stream. I'm Matt Robison, and something is shifting in American politics right now. You can see it in the polls, in special elections, and in the increasingly nervous behavior coming out of Trump's White House. The question is whether we're feeling a tremor or the start of an earthquake. This is one of those moments that's subtle. Have you ever felt something under your feet, a vibration? There's a truck passing on the road outside, a rumble, almost too low to detect. Only later, you see a news report that there was actually a low magnitude earthquake in your area. That's the kind of tectonic shift that I'm starting to feel. I wrote about this, some at least, on my Substack Worth Knowing, worthknowing.substack.com. Pointed out that while election forecasters were beginning to talk about Democrats now having a better chance at the US Senate, if you look at the numbers, it actually seems more like the Democrats have jumped into a solid lead. The generic ballot is now showing Democrats ahead by 5.7 points. Not quite where Democrats were in 2018 when we had a blue tsunami and they led by 8 points on the generic ballot on election day, but it's very close to the Republican margin, 6.2 points in 2010, that led then President Barack Obama to call that midterm election a shellacking. Or look at the polls of individual races. Credible polls now show the Democrat ahead in Maine, North Carolina, Alaska, Georgia, and tied in Ohio. Or look at the evidence of special elections. We've seen a 20-plus point shift in Democrats' favor in the most recent ones, and that tells us that Democrats and independents who lean toward Democrats are the voters who are actually motivated to turn out. So that's what the numbers say. But the question isn't whether there are warning signs, it's whether they add up to something real. Is it the beginning of gathering momentum? Is this as profound a shift as it looks like it is? And if things really are moving, is this just a flash in the pan? Meaning, have Democrats actually sorted out some of the problems that held them back in 2024? Or are they going to face the same darn things up ahead? To really dig in, I've lined up two awesome insiders who can walk us through what they're seeing behind closed doors for Republicans and for Democrats, because the people inside politics often feel something moving before everyone else. I'm first going to bring on a Republican political consultant who's advised many top Republican senators, the former executive director of the Massachusetts Republican Party, and my co-host on the Political Rehab show every Friday, Matt Wylie. And then later, I'm going to bring in one of the sharpest minds in the Democratic Party and a key advisor to some of the biggest names in the Democratic Party, Mark Bergman. With that, let's get right to my co-host on Political Rehab, Matt Wylie.
Matt, what's going on?
What's going on is it's something more than a rumble. There's something happening here, and I want to get a better sense of what it really is, what the shape of it is, how significant it is. And you and I talked about this on Political Rehab this past week. We said that there are 5 distinct signs going on that we saw last week of Trump actually starting to lose his grip, actually starting to lose control of the situation, things kind of going beyond him and maybe going beyond him permanently. So let's start off here. Take all of us inside what you're hearing, what you're picking up inside Republican circles that most of us never get inside those rooms. Are Republicans privately more worried about this than they publicly let on?
I think it's worse than you even think it could be or hope that it could be. I mean, I just had this conversation the other night. People who are Republican activists, people that are Trump, they are 100% with Trump. They are not changing where they are. When you get talking to them, it's kind of like, hey, maybe just quit saying this stuff. Maybe if we just kind of put our head in the sand, this won't happen. My eyes are closed. You can't see me kind of thing. And but it goes to the heart of where Republican enthusiasm is right now. I mean, we talked about this. We saw it at CPAC. We saw it at Turning Point with the vice president. Republicans aren't just nervous. They're at the point where they kind of want to wish this away. They're not ready. They don't see a victory for us, and they're just hoping this all goes away right now. And that is a huge problem for Republicans because it really sets us up. And these are the things that keep us up at night, all night long, is if regular Republicans' enthusiasm is down and continuing to go down, they're not going to show up in the polls. They've just given up. They're not going to care. And so our worry, our nightmare scenario right now is that every MAGA person shows up and votes every MAGA candidate out there in these swing districts, and they run pure Trump day in and day out. and they're going to win the primaries, but they're going to get their butt kicked in the general election. And so what we're starting to see over and over again is just that problem.
Let me pick up on something you just said about voter enthusiasm. I saw a Republican political consultant like you, probably a friend of yours, quoted in Politico the other day saying, this is a persuasion election. It's not a base election. I sort of see your point in presidential elections. It's a bit more of a base election because people are showing up and you're trying to motivate people. On the other hand, midterm elections, people are not guaranteed to show up.
Correct.
That's sort of the whole point. Voter turnout is so much lower. And therefore, in a way, that feels backwards to me. And what you just said about voter enthusiasm becomes incredibly important. And what I'm looking at here, this is some CNN polling showing that it's true that Democrats, and MJ was just making a point about this, like, perfect. Like MJ is perfectly channeling what I think a lot of Democrats are feeling, that we're just not that enthusiastic about our representatives and our leadership in Congress. So you pick that up in the polling, but the most important number here is the third line down. Extremely motivated to vote in 2026. 67% of Democrats, only 50% of Republicans. That would be the number that if I were you, and I were going to work for Republicans, would make me most nervous. When you guys are privately confabbing among Republican political operatives, right? Which I imagine you do it like a castle at the dead of night before sipping blood or whatever it is you guys do. What numbers do you look at? What numbers make you most nervous right now?
Look, first it's that. It is the voter enthusiasm, the voter turnout. It's Trump's approval numbers, which continue to plummet. And then the other side of this, and this is really, and you touched on it just a second ago here, our best hope is the Democrats need to screw up royally. And I'm confident they still can. But it's so the other.
I share your confidence, brother.
I know. The third number I keep looking at is kind of the Democrats and who's kind of leading. I mean, look, we can only get so far with the Mondamis and the AOCs and to sort of create a villain for us. Trump's biggest problem is that Democrats have been so quiet right now. There's no foil. There's no one to turn against. There's no one to say, here's what is going to happen if you don't vote for Republican, because they've been smart. Democrats have been smart, staying quiet, staying silent, and just kind of navigating these waters. As a strategist, the things that start keeping us up that we're all talking about is, how do we pounce once you guys come out of hiding, if you will? How do we pounce to get out there and start painting Democrats in a way that is that to motivate that base again, because they are not motivated. And right now, all things being equal, we have a turnout problem for Republicans. And I'm only talking swing districts. Like, I'm not talking deep South districts. We're not losing you're not losing my seat in South Carolina, but where we are going to lose, and Virginia has the redistricting plan up today, where we are going to lose in some of those districts that we need to win to hopefully maintain a majority, to maybe hold the Senate in some of those tight seats. Alaska should not be in play. That's a great example. Alaska is in play because we can't get our people excited about what Donald Trump is doing, what Republicans are doing, which is nothing right now. And so that's what we keep looking at, is we keep looking for that next step of what we can leverage and get out there and say, this is how we're going to win.
I want to go back. There's such good comments coming up in the chat. Let me go to one of them from Cynthia Rice right now, who asks, how can any real old school Republican support Trump's policies? The answer for this old school Republican sitting across from me is, you can't, which is why we devote so much time on political rehab to dumping on Trump and finding common ground around, we hate this guy.
Right, exactly.
We want to get back. Our whole idea with the show is we want to get back to the kinds of disagreements that are like productive disagreements, the kinds that you want to argue about because they matter and you're kind of all part of the American family and we all kind of care equally. And you would like, probably less spent. I'm just guessing here. I mean, we've talked plenty off the air, but you'd like to spend less on entitlement programs. You'd like to tax less. You are generally very old school, traditional Republican. I probably would like more of those things,
right?
But we can have a real discussion about this. So let me ask you this. I know you and I are on the same page, and I know you're part of a group of Republicans who's working hard to yank the party out of the clutches of Trump. How pissed off in behind closed doors are Republicans, especially elected Republicans that you talk to with Trump? Like, how much like exasperated eye rolling is going on about the president right now?
Oh, it's incredibly frustrating right now behind the scenes because it's poison pill after poison pill coming from the president. I mean, we've talked about this on the air too. Republicans, we're in charge in Congress. We should be putting poison pills that Democrats have to vote for to kind of help us help get ourselves elected. Instead, we're dealing with this from Trump. We're dealing with an unpopular Iran war that he can't seem to find a way to get himself out of it. We're dealing with higher gas prices that continue to go up, and we're getting horrible explanations on why and what we're trying to do. On top of that, we can't get the federal government under control. We're continuing to spend more. When are we going to eliminate the Department of Education? I mean, we have all these issues that just don't exist for Republicans to run on. And what Trump forces those Republicans to do is to vote on issues or take stands on issues that are unpopular with Republicans, with independents, and any swing voters that are out there. And so a lot of them are incredibly just pissed off. You see them leaving. Quite frankly, this is why they're resigning, because they would rather resign now and take a job or do something than just get their butt kicked and lose their seat, maybe save their powder later for things. But it is a problem that continues to brew. And going back to the question of why are they not standing up, it gets into the primary problem.
Yeah,
Because
let
if
me
you,
ask you about that. Let's go right to that because we have a
yeah,
couple of comments here. Lefty Gramps weighing in with, look, these Republicans can be pissed off all day, but their cowardice is bigger. And there was another one here. Yeah, again, it's from Cynthia, 5 bills in the House today glorifying Trump. I'm going to put words in your mouth and then you spit them at me, howitzer fashion, the ones that are wrong, and we'll see what that does. I'm guessing that the answer is like you were just suggesting. It's look, I've been in this position as a Democratic campaign manager before. I was in this position where, we were running a Senate candidate and Barack Obama was in trouble at the time. Not like Trump is in trouble now, but he was underwater. And I, basically the consensus around the table was if we've got to run away from the president now, we are totally lost. It is all over for us. So my guess is that what's quietly happening in the minds of Republicans who have doubts, who, aren't totally lost and under the spell is I'm going to stick with this. This is a shipwreck. This is the only shard of flotsam that I've got a hold of, even if it's like sticking into me, making me bleed, and probably
right.
weighing me down. But it's better than nothing. And if I let go, I'm dead. And you may see the shift after the midterms. Is that what's actually going on? Or am I like,
No, you're right. I mean, there's actually two pieces in this puzzle that really complicate matters for Republicans. Is from an electoral standpoint, pure electoral standpoint, right now, we're still navigating primaries, and primaries as you go up till September or after September, and so we got to navigate a base that is going to make our decision. Look at Cornyn in Texas as a prime example of why this is a problem for us.
hmm,
You got to navigate a base of people that is energized and motivated to support Trump, which is that MAGA base. But you have the rest of the Republican Party, the more traditional Main Street Republicans that you think about and you love, are the ones that are they're sitting home, they're not showing up. And so in order to win your primary and keep doing things and kind of outlast the Trump era, so to speak, you do look like cowards. You're not standing up for fundamental Republican values. The big beautiful bill was a horrible example of Republican legislation, but yet they all voted for it because they could not and would not stand up for Trump. And so from an electoral problem, they're cowards because they're not standing up for policy, and they're cowards because they're not standing up against the president. I do think you start to see some of that when you get past the primaries and the writing is on the wall
mm,
when this is going to happen. When Trump ceases to have influence, you do. But and let's be honest, that's still being cowards. Like we can say, oh, it's coming, it's going to be great, but they're still being cowards and they have not grown that backbone. What's really going to start to happen and where this tide is going to turn is I do think right now we're going to see devastating Republican election losses in November. I think it is a bloodbath in the House. You and I have talked about it a couple times in the Senate. It's just too many seats in play that shouldn't be. And Trump's numbers are going in the toilet. There's just nowhere else to go. And I think you're going to start to see this rebuilding. We do have groups out there. Our Republican Legacy is one of them. There's a couple other ones out there. They're trying to work on a grassroots level to change that dynamic so it's not this extreme cultish piece of our party, the MAGA base, that's driving it day in and day out.
I want to just call back to, you mentioned the one big beautiful bill that happened to be the topic of my edition of That's Bullshit on Political Rehab this week. It's also a standalone video that you can find here on the YouTube channel that we are building, worth knowing, on YouTube. And the point that I was making was very similar to the point you were just making, which is we both hated this bill for slightly different reasons. What it amounted to at the end of the day, and this is the place where I think you and I can agree. What that bill amounted to at the end of the day, $4.3 trillion of tax benefits. 1 trillion of that, 1/4 of that, going to the wealthiest 1%. Big chunks going to very already wealthy corporations. What's the common thread? This is a bill written by and for the Republican donor class. Now, your job is to run Republican political campaigns. And so that's not entirely a bad thing from your perspective, but it's a terrible thing in terms of your values and your philosophy.
Right.
And it gets to a point that you and I talked about off air, which is, look, if we sat down, or some of my other Republican friends, if we all sat down together and we said, look, let's do a bill that's going to create an economic stimulus. It's going to put money in the hands of the middle class. What are they more likely to do with it? Not pump it into the stock market because they can't spend all that money, right? And then it just ends up fueling the tech bubble. No, they're going to spend it. It's going to goose consumer spending. That's going to help GDP. That's going to help grow the economy, and it's going to help address the affordability crisis. If we wanted to do that, we could have a much higher bang for the buck with a much slimmer bill that's focused on tax cuts for the middle class. Could we find places in the federal government? Let me tell you something about Democrats in Congress, okay? Behind closed doors, we can totally agree that there are places that you could cut back on spending. One of them that we would choose would be the Department of Defense, which is getting $1 trillion, right? You might not choose the same thing, but the point is there are areas that we could agree. And it's so revealing that if the real agenda here was, let's have a big tax cut and let's reduce a little government spending to pay for it. Let's really put some dollars in the hands of working people, middle-class people. We could do that. We could do that for way less than the $4 trillion that we just spent. All right.
Yeah.
That's my
but that goes to another problem.
Like, I was about to dump on some Democrats, so I don't think you want to get in the way of that, but please go ahead.
No, I'll let you get to that. There's time for that. The issue is, but that's another one of these poison pills. For Republicans, we could have just done tax cuts and we could have then gone out and championed tax cuts, but we bury it in this monstrosity of a bill. We don't cut spending at all. We bury in it these things, Trump accounts, which is basically taking your government dollars and giving them somewhere else, which is basically socialism. And so we have this big bill that is so bad and has very few conservative or Republican ideas in it, except for maybe tax cuts, that it gives us nothing to run on. And that now we have to run out there and we just say, oh, we passed the one big, beautiful bill. And most Americans don't feel the economy's in a spot right now because of gas prices, because of inflation, because of all the issues that are out there. And so we have an affordability problem. And the thing we're campaigning on is this big monstrosity that nobody really understands. We don't have something to give to the voters to say, this is why you should vote for us. And like I said to you earlier, the Democrats are being quiet, too quiet, and gives us nothing to sort of attack them on. And so we're in this loose situation where everything Trump is doing is causing us problems. And as a result, it is destroying the party from within.
All right, let's pick up on the point you just made, that Democrats are presenting a narrow target. And you're saying that's a feature, not a bug. It's something we've talked about on political rehab recently. And I want to connect that to some comments that people have been making. MJ pointing out that she thinks Democratic leadership has failed because there are no ideas except Trump bad.
Right.
That's a pretty fair criticism. Jim Williams coming in, if that's the case, then Hakeem Jeffries had better read the room and step aside. Same with Schumer. And MJ doubled down with an F-bomb version of Jeffries has no plans. And what you're saying is that's probably true. That's probably right.
It is true.
But
It is true.
But is there like a certain, I mean, are they getting lucky then? Because you're saying the upside of that for Democrats is there's nothing to go after. Like ad makers, you don't have 30-second ads to cut against
Right.
all
Right.
these guys and gals in Congress because there's just no material out there.
Look, every time Schumer and Jeffries speak, Republicans gain points in the polls. So the best thing that happens is for them to be quiet. You do have a crisis of leadership in the Democrats right now because you have so many factions out there. And whether it's the AOC, Bernie Sanders, or it's the Schumer, Jeffries, they all give us targets. And right now they're quiet enough where there are not those targets. But there is the old adage in politics, if somebody's hanging themselves, don't get in the way of it. Right. And so Republicans are right there. They're the ones hanging themselves. And so Democrats, I think, smartly are staying quiet. Now, it won't last. You can't do that. You can't duck and cover your way to a victory. And so at some point in time, someone will emerge as the voice, as who is going to be the leader of the Democrats. And if it continues to be Schumer, if it continues to be Jeffries, that is going to help Republicans a lot. But it just really depends on how bad Trump does right there. And so I think it's a smart move right now. I hate it because I'd love for them to be more forward, more front and center, so it'd give us some stuff to attack. I would love everybody to rally behind AOC or Mondami so that it gives us more socialism, and that helps with those swing voters and the base. But until Democrats really step in it, it's hard for us to kind of create that villain. And as everybody knows, an election is about contrast and differences. And that's why Trump is so successful on elections, but not very good as a president, because when he's basically fighting himself, and even the other day talked about Biden, and nobody cares about Biden anymore. He's trying to create a villain that doesn't exist. And so it just falls flat, which again creates more problems for Republicans.
Speaking of creating villains that don't exist, I mean, I came in for a little piece of friendly criticism from my friend Lefty Gramps here, who says, to my point about, hey, there's nothing for Republicans to grab a hold of to run 30 seconds in. And he's like, oh, please, Matt, Repugs, that's you, man. We'll just make shit up.
That's creative.
Well,
that's creative.
Will,
he's not wrong.
You will make shit up.
Of course we
used
will.
to talk about this plenty when I was a congressional staffer, right? You'd make the argument of, we don't want to have this vote because that's going to be tough. There's going to be an ad about it. And someone would just point out, like, does it matter? They're going to say the same stuff anyway. So why are you worried about it? To tell you the truth, I think I had a better argument about that then than I do now. I think back then, because there was still a credibility factor that people cared about in the aughts, in the 2010s, you still had, like, I just had Glenn Kessler on last week. There was still enough of a credibility and media filter factor that you didn't want the charge to have that verisimilitude, what Colbert would call truthiness to it.
Right.
Of this is why what happens. If you watch C-SPAN, first of all, get help. Second of all, if you watch C-SPAN, what you'll see is on every bill, the minority party will be given what's called a motion to recommit, which is basically an invitation for skullduggery, where they're allowed to say, hey, I know we're about to pass this bill, but how about instead we don't? And we send it back to committee with instructions. And the instructions can be whatever you want. So the instructions can be, I want to send it back to committee with instructions to have them proclaim that mothers, apple pie, non-AI generated Jesuses, and all other manner of good things are good and Satan is evil. And then if you vote against that because you want to pass the bill, there's a 30-second ad back. I think there used to be something to that. I'm not so sure that it matters that much anymore. How much does it matter to you? Take me inside this. You advise Republicans on messaging, on ads. How much does it matter if you're going to make a charge against a Democrat that they actually have something for you to hold on to, some official action that you can hang that off of? Or does it not matter at all?
Look,
Am I wrong?
the reality of today's political world is all you need to be is in the same party as someone who may have said that. And defund ICE is going to be the perfect example. You're going to see a ton of AOC wants to defund ICE, so candidate Y wants to defund ICE because they're both Democrats, kind of thing. And so I don't need you to say it. I just need you to be associated with who said it. Now, we've done this for years. We talked about we don't want Nancy Pelosi, don't bring San Francisco values to the Midwest. We do this all the time. But the difference is today, because of the way the data I have on you, the way I can target you, is I can really pinpoint that constantly and deliver that message over and over again. We're not even really talking about 30-second ads anymore. It's just how much can I hit you with text messages, with digital ads, with just making it show up everywhere you go, where you as a candidate on the other side can't really push back on it. So it doesn't matter if you say it. It doesn't matter if it's necessarily true. I just need a glimmer and some polling to suggest that it's going to help me win the race. And then we're just going to double down. But that's why politics has become so toxic, because we're doing it on both sides. This isn't just a Republican thing. It is a Democrat thing too. And as we retreat to each other's corner or different corners and different sides of the media landscape, we just keep pounding over and over and over again until we try to persuade you. The difference why all of this may or may not matter this cycle is there's still the Trump factor who dominates the news every single day. And so where I may be able to convince someone that you kick puppies every time you walk by them every single day, the reality is Trump's going to say something that's going to infuriate you more. And that's really where the problem comes from Republicans, is the tactics that we've used in the past to win these races don't work as well with Trump saying the things he says every single day. And so we have to adjust and find different ways to make it interesting and to persuade you to come out and vote. And that's why I keep saying we need a villain. We need the Democrats to step up and say something so we can go after Jeffrey, so we can go after Schumer, so we can use them to tie everybody together. And if that doesn't happen, we're in a world where it's just Trump saying crazy shit every single day that causes us headaches on our side and makes it harder for us to win.
I know you have to get out of here. We're about to hit the bottom of the hour. I will say, first of all, you share some common ground with the Cynthia Rice, who says, I am tired of Trump monopolizing the daily news cycle. And that's exactly the same point you were making, which is
Yep.
like, you'd like to get out from under that. And it sounds like secretly many Republicans
We all
do.
we all
And
do. Yeah.
that's the other point that I think deserves to be made about, does it matter how Democrats vote? Yes, because there's not just 30-second ads in politics. That's not the only, there's also the media, there's earned media, there's social media. I mean, it does go into the mix, and we could get much more into that, but I do want to respect your time. I know you've got to go. I'm going to see you political rehab on Friday. I hope people will jump over. I'm going to splash this up on the banner one more time. Check us out over on Worth Knowing YouTube. Matt, thanks so much.
Yep. See you soon. Thanks, Matt.
All right. All right. With that, it sounds like the answer there was a pretty clear yes. The numbers in this case are telling a story that's consistent with the vibes going on inside Republican circles. They're definitely seeing it. They're definitely nervous. There's definitely discussion going on behind the scenes. It seems to be a pretty shared characteristic, and it reinforces the fact that sometimes the numbers lie. Sometimes the numbers tell a distorted version of the truth. There's, as Churchill said, I mean, Churchill's a bit of a fraught figure these days, but as Churchill said, there's three kinds of lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I can definitely create statistics for you. And by the way, I am holding on just a second here because Mark Bergman is trying to work his way into the live stream right now. But take a set of figures like this, right? Boy, that blew up way bigger. Let me take the banner off for a second. This is the most recent set of credible polls in the marquee Senate races, right? And we had some comments in the chat before. John Ossoff is absolutely crushing it. He's up by 3 in Georgia. Alaska, Democrat +5. North Carolina, Roy Cooper, Democrat +8. Maine, could be Plattner or Mills. I believe this is on the basis of Plattner. Regardless, either way, Democrat +9. Ohio, we're tied with Sherrod Brown on the ballot. And the question becomes, is that relevant? Are the numbers telling you a real story? The answer is they kind of are. It's kind of telling you a real story. Polling figures this far out are not especially predictive. They are reasonably predictive when they're for the generic ballot. So you look at individual races, you look at numbers like what we were just looking at here, that's, I don't know, maybe 40, 50% predictive. It could end up there, but you look at some close margins, things could shift. But you look at the generic ballot, and this is from Nate Silver from last week. I think it's now a Dems plus 5.6. It's statistically the same. But as I mentioned in the open, we are right now we're knocking on the door of the same territory that in 2010 led Republicans to that midterm shellacking. And we're creeping up toward the territory that you would have seen in 2018 with the blue tsunami. Now, how real is this? Turns out that about 200 days out, which we are, this is fairly predictive. And there's a pretty good data history here that says that these numbers are going to continue to trend toward the Democrats. They're going to continue to break that way. That's especially underscored when you have a situation like we have now with Trump so far underwater on approval rating. You have an unpopular president. The party that's in the opposition, the generic ballot tends to break their way by a couple of points at the very end stretch. And you're really talking at that point about going from 5.7 points, almost 6 points, to that 8-point spread. And then you're in blue tsunami territory. Speaking of blue tsunami, it's about time to welcome in someone I advertised as one of the sharpest minds in Democratic politics, coming to us from an airport, Mark Bergman. Mark, thanks for making it.
Sorry, I'm at an airport. You can hear where I am, but thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Look, I mean, I kind of love it because you are literally going around the country working with the Democrats who are on the front lines. And I just want to put to you the same proposition that I put to Matt Wylie, Republican political consultant, and that I laid out at the top of the show. The numbers suggest that something significant has shifted in the past several weeks, that Democrats are gaining the high ground heading into the midterms. There seems to be a significant fracturing in the MAGA coalition. 1 in 7 Republican voters now say that they regret their vote from 2024. Are you picking this up with all the candidates you work with? Are you guys picking this up?
100%. When you pledge that you are not going to go to war over the course of 4 years and you immediately turn around and engage in military conflicts that your own base doesn't support, you're going to see a fracturing of your coalition. And his base was very much a base of anti-war Republicans that were really turned off by the Iraq war under the W administration, the Bush administration, and he immediately turned down and went into a Middle East conflict they said he would never do. I would say this: $7 gasoline is morally clarifying for a lot of Americans who previously supported the president.
Yes, it does seem to clarify the mind. Now, okay, we've said all the good news here, but there are some nits we could pick here. One of them is I was just showing the generic ballot numbers. This is probably not going to show up super large on your screen for you.
I can see it, yeah.
But I mean, Trump is underwater at almost historic levels, 20 points more negative than positive on approval. Views of Trump on the economy, similarly, cratering. The Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index at literally historic lows, never been lower in the whole history. Joanna Sue, who runs that survey, has been a guest on this show. We've talked about this. It's a significant predictor of how real, normal Americans are feeling. But it doesn't seem that full loathing of Trump that you just talked about, the fracturing of the MAGA coalition, doesn't seem to be fully translating to the generic ballot. Why do you think that is?
Because it's not. I would say this: you look at this chart. The Democratic Party is clearly doing well on the generic ballot. There was a period in 2024 where the Republicans led the generic ballot. Let me put it this way: the generic ballot in the race for Congress is a nice statistic, but it means about nothing in actually the control of Congress. Because control of Congress isn't based on a national generic ballot. It's based on the generic ballot in the districts that determine control of Congress. And those districts are probably lean slightly more conservative. So you need the Democrats to have a substantial lead in the national generic ballot to really have a real good shot at winning control of Congress. The other thing I would say that concerns the Democratic Party, not just this year, but long term, is the redistricting effort that's going on in states like Florida, North Carolina, and potentially in all states across the South if the Voting Rights Act is repealed by the Supreme Court. While we are in a good position to control Congress in 2026, our long-term ability to be a majority party in this country is very imperiled by what is going on in this country and what is going on at the Supreme Court and at the redistricting level in states around the country. So yes, there's good news, but there's bad news on the horizon.
Do you buy the numbers that we're seeing, the most recent numbers that I'm splashing up on the screen in the Senate races? I wrote an article saying, hey, look, all due respect to the Cook Political Report, which says, hey, Democrats are making up some ground, but it's still Republicans with the upper hand. I look at numbers like this and the trend lines, and I say, tell me why I shouldn't be saying Democrats are in the lead in the race for the Senate right now.
As you and I both know, here's what those numbers say is, in a lot of states like Georgia and North Carolina and Ohio, it's really easy for a Democrat to get to 45, 46%. It's really hard for a Democrat to get to 50.1. And in those polls, a Democrat's under 50% of the vote. So yes, the poll numbers look good, but you have to look at where the Democratic vote is, and then you have to look at what's the remaining undecided. And most of the undecided in those polls are Republicans or conservative-leaning voters. So to win a lot of those Senate races, we're going to have to win voters who do not agree with us on much of anything, but really are disappointed with the president.
I want to, so I've got Lefty Gramps in the chat right now, agreeing with you and saying, exactly, Mark. Let me see if I can splash this up correctly. Exactly, Mark. Any guest I've ever had loves seeing the chats agree with them. Exactly.
Listen, I always say, if you agree with me, then you'll disagree with me later.
Great. Let's set it up right now. Right before that, he wrote, progressive policies are favored by large majorities in the US. That's an interesting proposition, because what you're pointing out is that in the districts that are the actual swing districts, and you work for candidates almost exclusively in those kinds of districts. As a congressional staffer, I worked exclusively for swing district members of Congress.
Yeah.
I've worked only in tough races. And I will tell you that there's still, maybe things have changed, but what do you make of Lefty's contention here? Is the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, is that helping us? Are those kinds of policy ideas getting us ahead, or are we still in a little bit of an explanation deficit?
It depends which type of progressive policies we're talking about. I think on an economic front, progressivism is the future of the Democratic Party in terms of making sure that our tax code is fair, making sure that millionaires and billionaires and people who earn their money on interest and capital gains are paying more in taxes than someone who earns their money working. The fact that you only pay 15% on capital gains, but you pay up to 25 to 30% on earned income is something that is a progressive policy that could be fixed, that the majority of Americans will agree with us on. Here's the problem for the Democratic Party, in my view, in a lot of these places. is that we are really struggling on the cultural debate. And this is something that my friends in the party don't really want to admit, that we're on the wrong side of the cultural debate in this country. We might be on the right side of the moral arc of history, but we are in the wrong side of where voters are culturally. I said this to you the other day, and nobody, this is my own personal theory and people can laugh at me, but I asked you if you knew who Ella Langley was. And you said,
I admitted that I did not.
You did not. And I guarantee a lot of your viewers here do not know who Ella Langley is. She is the #1 singer in America right now. And I guarantee you a lot of progressive Democrats don't know. It's because culture is downstream of politics. And right now, a lot of this country subscribes to a more culturally conservative view on a lot of cultural issues, on religious issues, on issues of gender. These are issues that we are not on the right side of the country. We are on the right side of the moral arc of history, but we are not on the right side of a lot of voters. And I go back to what the CEO of McDonald's said about that. It's like he said, I would love to serve people more healthy food, but I serve people what they want to eat. That is my job as a businessman. And as a job of political operatives, it is our job to meet voters not where they are, not where we would like them to be. And a lot of people in this country are really not where we are on a lot of these cultural issues. And Republicans are really effective at trumping our economic progressivism with this cultural conservatism where a lot of Americans actually are.
Yeah, 2 points about that. One is, I actually agree with the Cynthia Rice here. If you didn't tell people it was a progressive policy, take away the party and just present the policy, it's popular. I think that's largely correct. I've been writing about Zohran Mamdani recently.
Yes.
And I wrote with praise about the fact that he was going to break his campaign promise for free buses. And I pointed out, Mamdani is a very intelligent man. He can do math. He knew in advance that, of course, there was no way this was ever going to really be practical, but it was directionally representative of what he wanted to do. All voters here out of that is, I actually am focused like a freaking laser beam, like a shark with a freaking laser beam on how unaffordable life is in New York. That's what halalflation was about. That's what rent was about. That's what free childcare was about. He's staying focused on, but these are all proof points of where he would like to go directionally. And he is going to try heck to make them real. And it's an earnest thing. I think Democrats tend to get a little too caught up on, boy, we've really got to explain the 5th decimal point on our quintile disparity erasure plan. I agree with that. I also agree with your point that politics gets trumped by culture. And even if what's being presented to voters is a skewed, warped, bumper sticker, bullshit version of progressive beliefs on culture, it still resonates. And we saw it in polling. I mean, that's just the 3 issues that resonated the most in polling in 2024. The reasons that undecided voters for Trump were inflation, immigration, and a sense that Kamala Harris was too woke and didn't represent people's core values.
Their values.
Right.
And this is why I say, I would encourage everyone who doesn't know who she is, go look up Ella Langley. Look up what she says, look up what she does, look up her lyrics, and understand why she has the #1 song in America for the last month. That is the #1 song in America, and I guarantee most viewers on this show don't even know who she is. And she is a phenomenon in this country. And we are living in a bubble if we don't understand what the culture of America and the majority of Americans actually have. It is not our job to just shun people who don't necessarily agree with us. It's our job to understand what the country actually is and to try to meet them where they are.
Cynthia's asking, is she country music? And Lefty's saying,
Yes.
I know she is. Lefty, we've established this, that you are more hip and with it than I am. I definitely exist in a bubble, like bubble wrap, and inside there's another layer of bubble wrap. I'm inside that, okay? And I'm not a country music guy, and that is definitely part of the issue. But your larger point stands that, and I don't think we solve it. I don't think we solve it by answering a certain brand of kind of culture issues with policy issues. I don't, that's usually our response, which is, what's the matter with Kansas? I'll tell you, we're better for your wallet. And it's, yes, people vote on the economy stupid, but they kind of don't.
But also just note what the president, what before the current president, President Obama was like. He was a cultural phenomenon. He wasn't just somebody who was getting people excited about policy. He was downstream of where culture was at that moment in history. Presidents are downstream of American culture. And if we are going to be successful as a party, we have to be on the right side of culture.
Let me then turn this to the overall theme that we're discussing about the recent shift that's clearly real. You agree that it's there. Matt Wylie agrees that it's there. We're seeing it somewhat in the numbers, even if they're not as promising. Are you getting are you being selected for special screening? Yes, you are. Okay, I'm gonna filibuster for a second because it looks like Mark Bergman has been identified as an evildoer, quite possibly a terrorist.
I'm back.
Oh, good. You'll be happy to know that a MAGA troll in here is saying that a misspelled version of you is full of shit. But
Are
MJ,
you sure it's a MAGA troll?
Yes, but MJ, sorry, Don, I apologize. If you're not a MAGA troll and I misread that, I apologize. But no, MJ, who I know usually agrees with me, but is also not afraid to tell me when I'm full of shit, agreeing with you.
I did see someone say that 18 to 35-year-olds don't listen to country music. I would point out among that, if you look into Apple Music, and I would encourage people to go look at it because I've looked at this, they divide it by age and listenership, and Spotify listenership, again, Ella Langley, among 18 to 35-year-olds, especially younger women, is the #1 singer in America.
Wow.
Just pointing that out.
That is interesting. Look, user TTBR549 points out the important truth that metal will never die. Amen, brother or sister, whatever. Also, right. I'd like to point out that whatever the animals are doing in your little image there, I'm not sure it's good. I'm not sure that's okay.
And
Lefty Gramps is concerned that ice is onto you. So that's fantastic. But I mean, so is this the wall that we might run into? I mean, let's assume for a second that we've got the momentum and that things really have shifted and things are looking good as of today.
I feel good about where we are headed in 2026, but that is not an affirmation of progressivism in our policies. It is a rejection of the administration and their governance of the country. And if we don't look at it that way, what we're going to end up doing is running into a buzzsaw in 28.
I will just clarify here that Running with the Pack album cover. Okay, I've looked closer at what the Wolves are doing, and they appear to be feeding their young, so that's okay. And Don Case confirms that he is, or she, but Don, I guess, the dude, he is MAGA 100%. All right, I apologize for calling you a troll. Maybe you're not trolling. Maybe you're just saying that my friend Mark is full of shit.
Listen, you can have those opinions.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Mark tells me I'm full of shit all the time. So that's the wall. So walk me into the future on this. Democrats will win the Senate and the House in the midterm elections if
maybe
fill in the blank.
They will win the Senate and the House if the president does not adjust his policies and try to focus on the economy and reinvigorate his base, because midterm elections are turnout elections, not only a persuasion election. And if his base does not come out to vote, then it's going to be an epic disaster for the Republican Party. Not just, you're talking about races that they should win, that they will lose all over the country.
So if this number continues from CNN, 67% of Democrats extremely motivated to vote in 2026, only 50% of Republicans, that's the secret sauce. Let's do the inverse.
Yes.
Democrats' momentum will stall out if fill in the blank.
It'll stall out if we get overtaken by our own Tea Party in these primaries upcoming, and we have candidates that the Republicans are able to make unelectable. Like you and I lived this in 2010 with
Mm.
Christine O'Donnell in Delaware, or Sharon
Hold on,
Angle
she'll hear
in
you.
Nevada. I mean, or Ovid LaMontagne, for example, almost overtaking Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire. If there's this very extreme movement inside of our party that ends up winning these primaries and these candidates become unelectable in November, then I think you've got a problem as a party.
I want to ask about, oh boy. All right. I'm going to ruin your career. You ready?
Okay.
Are you excited for this?
I've already done it.
All right. I want to touch quickly on two debates that I was having with Matt right before you joined. First, when you and I worked in Congress for many years, we used to sweat all kinds of stupid shit that would
Yes.
happen, votes that would happen in the House, because we recognized that every day was an opportunity to create fodder for a 30-second ad that would run against you, or a slew of media headlines. You and I, we worked in the same office, and we underwent months of negative earned media over how much mail our boss was sending out.
Oh,
This
man,
was
now they're doing
the
TV ads
yeah,
with
exactly.
Frank Money.
This was the dumbest story in the history of dumb stories, but it was a negative story that was running over and over again. And that
Yeah.
can be death by 1,000 cuts. And
Yes.
we used to sweat things like motions to recommit, votes that could be hung on us. And the counter argument was always, who cares if you're giving ammunition? The other side's going to say what they're going to say no matter what you do. Do you agree with that counter argument more now that it doesn't matter how you vote or what you do in
I mean,
office?
it's a different era than it was in 2008, right? I think what matters now is not necessarily how you vote, but what you say on camera that can be put in an ad. I mean, I refer you back to our work in the Commonwealth of Virginia against Winsome Earl Sears, when she had this horrible moment where she
I
started
have spoken.
Yeah, exactly. Where she has started screaming at the crowds like, I'm speaking. And that moment wasn't a vote. It wasn't a policy position. It was a moment where she looked unhinged. And the people of Virginia were not going to elect someone who was unhinged as their governor. They wanted a stable, steady hand at the wheel. And these moments that I think people want, steady, stable hands at the wheel running the government. And it's those type of things that cause losses in elections, not votes. It was Harris. It was if you look at where Harris really struggled, it was on The View when she had a horrible moment, couldn't name one thing she'd do different than President Biden. And it's when she was at a forum and she said some things that were not so great that was used against her on transgender rights. So it's these moments that you have in campaigns or in governance that become like defining moments of your personality that people like me can then transform and define you as a candidate. And if we nominate people with those type of moments that can be put in ads and can be defined, then you got a real problem as a party in winning some of these Senate races where we have a good shot to win.
The other conversation that was going on and that's actually just kind of bubbled up again is, what about establishment Democrats? What about the leadership in Congress? Matt Wylie was making an argument from the Republican side. Look, you may be frustrated with your current leaders as Democrats, but let me tell you that as a Republican who has to run political campaigns, I'm frustrated because I don't have a lot of material to work with. They may not be dynamic leaders. They may not be saying a lot of like strong stuff, but they're not saying anything. And I don't have material to attack them with. So in a way, it's working for you. Do you think as much fire as Democratic leaders have come under from our own base, do you think that is kind of even unintentionally a strategy that's working for Democrats? Lay low and let the Republicans keep hanging themselves with their own rope.
I think you've got to understand where a lot of Democratic voters are coming from, which I do, is I don't think it's necessarily Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries. It's what they represent over a period of time that the leadership of the party has allowed this man to reach the White House twice. And that is what you're seeing a reaction to, is that this party did not stop this man despite him effectively being a criminal, and that the establishment of the Democratic Party has failed to stop him. and continues to fail to stop him in what he is doing to this country. So, yes, I totally empathize where the Democratic voters are about the establishment Democrats. I don't think it's about the way they manage the floor. I think it's about a whole leadership wing of the party that's failed to stop the MAGA movement over the course of over a decade.
Right. And as Cynthia points out, Trump says stupid shit every day, but gets a pass. Yeah. I mean, he kind of gets a pass. He kind of doesn't. I mean, you don't get to this level of approval rating for nothing. But I see her larger point, which is there has been a failure here. There has been a clear failure here. We haven't stopped this guy twice. I can understand the hunger for let's do something different here. And Lefty Gramps agrees with you. Once again, you're really scoring with the electorate here.
Yeah, except on my choice of music. But I will say that, yes, that's true. The problem with the president is his ability to say crazy, stupid stuff is what is his brand, which is he says what he thinks,
Right.
which people think politicians don't do, is they won't say what they actually think. And it just, whatever in his brain comes out of his mouth, and that's to his benefit with the large majority of the electorate. He also speaks at a third grade level, which is where most of the electorate actually is. You just have to understand how he connects with the base in that way.
I'd love to get into some of the issues that people are teeing up here, including what about the media? Like it's sort of your bread and butter, dealing with the media every day, talking to the reporters and trying to shape the stories. I wish we had more time, but you are a man on the go.
Yes.
You are.
Yes. I will say the mainstream media, I mean, as much as we want to say they're relevant, I'm not sure they're as relevant as they've been ever. It's nice. It's like they talk to a lot of old people in this country, but anyone under the age of 35, ask them if they're watching the nightly news or watching the Today Show or watching any of that stuff. I talked to my 10-year-old son, and he couldn't even tell me what CBS, ABC, or NBC are, but he could tell you what YouTube is. So I think we can blame the mainstream media. I think it's more that there is an echo chamber in this country that the right wing has established that the left wing has not matched, that we have to really work on.
If you want to build the Democratic echo chamber and amplification mechanism, first of all, you and I are both old friends of Cliff Schechter, and we are live streaming right now on Cliff's Blue Amp Media, Cliff's Edge YouTube channel. Maybe you should just call it Facebook. It's cleaner, right? Like too many words, too many notes, but you can subscribe right now to Blue Amp Media. And Cliff actually has a program going where he is trying to amplify independent voices on the left, and he's putting some money behind it. It's an awesome project. So you can support that there. If you want to also amplify progressive, left, smart, Democratic Party leaning media, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have looked at the demographics on my YouTube channel. You know how old they skew? What the fuck? I thought I was like a young guy.
You're
no,
not
apparently not. I appeal to a more mature set. So that's there you go. And my 12-year-old just started a YouTube channel where he does NBA edits, and he's like getting more subscribers more rapidly than I am. This is terrible. People want to watch basketball. They don't want to talk about politics.
That's true.
All right, Mark, thanks so much. Get safely to your destination. Watch out for ICE. Remember, just say to them in Spanish, am I free to go or am I detained?
I have my passport. I'm good.
All right, there we go. That's Mark Bergman, everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and let him go, and I'm going to sign off for everyone here. Look, thanks, everyone, for being part of this discussion. I want to preview that we have got an awesome show coming up. Oh, I've got 2 awesome shows getting lined up over the next 2 weeks. I've got secretaries of state. I've got folks from Blue Amp Media, from Cliff's other shows lined up to come on. I've got the best expert that exists on all of how the federal government spends its money. Your money, really. The number one expert, really fascinating person, one of my very favorite guests lined up to come on as well. So I hope you will stick with that. Subscribe over on my YouTube, Worth Knowing YouTube, Worth Knowing with Matt Robison. You can also find me, of course, on my Substack, worthknowing.substack.com. All right. That's enough out of me. Until next week, stay safe, be well. See you soon.